regarding this specific wire transfer amounting to $847,000, which was moved from your climate justice fund directly into the limited liability company managed by your partner? What precise purpose did that transaction serve? President Donald Trump's voice resonated powerfully throughout the expanse of the Oval Office. He was positioned behind the resolute desk, elevating a bank statement in his hand, gazing toward Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez with the intensity of a seasoned prosecutor who has just ensnared a defendant in a blatant falsehood. He appeared not irate, but rather possessed of a dark amusement, the expression of an individual who recognized that he held every strategic advantage and was deriving satisfaction from observing the other party comprehend that they possessed absolutely none. A silence descended. A complete and suffocating silence. The specific variety of quiet that emerges when an individual realizes that the walls are closing in around them, and that every scheme is unraveling. Every shortcut taken, every falsehood uttered, is on the verge of being exposed in the most detrimental manner imaginable. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was seated in the chair opposite President Trump, her characteristic confidence having completely evaporated. Her hands were tightly gripping the armrests, and her complexion had turned noticeably pale beneath her makeup. She had entered this office 20 minutes prior, under the impression that this was to be a meeting regarding climate policy, perhaps an opportunity to lecture Trump on the Green New Deal, or potentially acquire some engaging content for social media. Instead of a policy discussion, she had walked directly into a meticulously planned ambush. FBI Director Christopher Wray was positioned against the wall to Trump's right side, his arms folded across his chest, observing her with the clinical detachment of a law enforcement veteran who has witnessed 1,000 criminals realize they have been apprehended. Standing beside him was a woman in her 40s, dressed in a dark, professional suit. Later, AOC would discover that this individual was the FBI's lead forensic accountant, the specialist who had dedicated 8 months to tracking every single dollar. The surface of the resolute desk was obscured by documents, including bank statements, records of wire transfers, invoices, incorporation papers for shell companies, and tax returns. There were 3 years of financial records, all organized with meticulous care, and all pointing toward one singular conclusion: fraud committed on a massive scale. That payment was designated for consulting services. AOC's voice emerged, sounding defensive and uncertain. The confident, progressive champion who could effortlessly handle any interview on Fox News was gone, and in her place was someone who sounded exactly like what she was, a person who had been caught. Trump smiled, though it was not a friendly expression. It was the smile of a predator who had been waiting patiently and now had his prey effectively cornered. Consulting services, is that right? Your boyfriend, Riley Roberts, operates a firm called Soweries Strategies. That is the Irish word meaning freedom, which is cute, except for the fact that Riley does not possess any expertise in climate policy, does he? He is a web designer by trade. So what exactly did he consult on to justify a payment of $847,000? He did not wait for a response, but instead extracted more documents from the stack. Actually, allow me to save you the trouble of fabricating an explanation. The FBI has already traced the funds. The money was deposited into his company's account on June 15, 2024, where it remained for exactly 48 hours. And then, on June 17th, the entirety of it, every single dollar, was transferred to a bank located in the Bahamas to an account registered to a shell company named Future Holdings, LLC. Trump looked up from the documents, his eyes hardening. Do you want to guess who is the owner of Future Holdings? I will provide you with a hint. Her initials are AOC. One could visibly see the reaction on her face, the color draining away, and the way her breathing accelerated as the realization struck her like a physical blow. He possesses the bank records, the FBI has traced the money, and they know absolutely everything. I want my lawyer, she managed to say. You can have 10 lawyers. Trump's voice cut sharply through her protest. After we conclude our business here, right now, You are going to sit in that chair and answer my questions because here is your current situation. I possess evidence, actual hard evidence, including bank records, wire transfers, and security footage demonstrating that you laundered millions of dollars in donor money through fake companies into offshore accounts. He walked around the desk and stood there, looking down at her. So, you have two distinct choices before you. Choice 1. You cooperate. You tell me everything, including who else was involved and where all the money went. You confess publicly, you resign, and perhaps, just perhaps, we can work out a deal where you do not spend the next 20 years in a federal prison. He leaned back against the desk. Choice 2. You continue playing this game. You deny everything. You call your lawyers. And I will walk out of this office, go straight to the press briefing room, and have Director Wray announce that the FBI is arresting you for wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and theft. We will conduct a perpetrator walk, escorting you out of the Capitol in handcuffs with every camera in America watching. And then you will go to trial, get convicted because the evidence is overwhelming, and you will die in prison. Trump picked up a photograph from his desk and held it up. It showed AOC wearing a designer dress at what appeared to be a gala. This is you at the Met Gala last year. That dress cost $35,000 and was custom-made, and you paid for it with money from the Climate Justice Fund. Money donated by teachers and nurses who believed they were fighting climate change. He picked up another photograph. This is you in Turks and Caicos, at a 5-star resort costing $3,500 a night, paid for by the Green New Deal PAC, and listed as a strategy retreat. Yet, you went alone with your boyfriend some strategy session that must have been. Trump tossed the photos onto the desk in front of her. You raised $17 million from working-class people who believed in you, who thought you were different, who thought you were fighting for them, and you stole it. You bought designer clothes, beach vacations, and a condo in Miami. You are not a Democratic Socialist Congresswoman. You are a con artist with effective branding. He pressed a button on his desk, and the door opened. 2 FBI agents in dark suits walked in and stood on either side of the doorway, waiting. Trump looked at AOC. So, what is it going to be? Are you going to tell me the truth? Or are these agents going to arrest you right now? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stared at the FBI agents, at Christopher Wray, at the mountain of evidence on Trump's desk, and at the President of the United States, who somehow possessed everything. Every transaction, every wire transfer, every lie she had ever told, and she realized she had absolutely no way out. To understand how the most famous young progressive in America ended up trapped in the Oval Office with the FBI ready to arrest her, one needs to go back 4 hours earlier to when she received a phone call that would effectively end her career. It was Tuesday morning, February 11th, 2026, in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's congressional office within the Cannon House office building. The morning had been routine, involving coffee with her communications team, a Zoom call with activists regarding the Green New Deal, and preparation for an MSNBC interview later in the week. Her chief of staff, Marcus, knocked and entered, without waiting, looking visibly confused. You are not going to believe this, but the White House just called. AOC looked up from her phone, where she had been crafting a tweet about wealth inequality. The White House? What do they want? President Trump wants to meet with you today at 2 p.m. AOC's eyebrows raised in surprise. Trump wants to meet with me? About what? Marcus shook his head. They said it is about your climate legislation, the Green New Deal. They want to discuss policy options. AOC laughed incredulously. Trump wants to discuss the Green New Deal? The guy who thinks climate change is a Chinese hoax? What is the real reason? I do not know, but they were very insistent. They said a car would pick you up at 1:30, and the president expects you at 2. They specified that you are to come alone. No staff, no lawyers, just a private policy discussion. AOC's communications director, Jen, had joined them. This is obviously a trap. He likely wants to yell at you on camera or something to get a viral moment of him owning you. AOC considered the situation. She had been attacked by Trump before, called a disaster, and mocked on Twitter, and she had seen her policies ridiculed, but she had survived everything and turned every attack into fundraising emails and social media content. She had 8.4 million Twitter followers and a national brand. She felt untouchable. "Fine," she said. "I will go. Let him yell. I will stand my ground, defend the Green New Deal, and tweet about it afterward. This is actually good for me. I might raise $200,000 by tonight just off the confrontation." Her team laughed nervously, but they drafted talking points anyway, including responses to potential attacks and a social media strategy, standard preparation for what they assumed would be a hostile but ultimately survivable political meeting. What none of them knew, what they could not have possibly known, was that while they were preparing talking points, FBI forensic accountants were in the Oval Office presenting the final results of an 8-month criminal investigation. That same morning, 3 hours earlier, the Oval Office had hosted a very different kind of meeting. FBI Director Christopher Wray had arrived at 8:30 a.m. with his lead investigator and a forensic accountant named Dr. Sarah Chen, formerly of the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. They had brought 3 bankers' boxes full of evidence, including bank records, wire transfers, incorporation documents, tax returns, emails, and text messages, 8 months of work, distilled into an airtight case. Trump sat behind the resolute desk, reading through the executive summary. Dr. Chen had prepared. Every few seconds, he would shake his head or mutter something. Unbelievable. Can you believe this? She thought she would get away with it. After 15 minutes, he looked up. Okay, walk me through it from the beginning. How did we catch her? Dr. Chen stepped forward. She was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed, with the demeanor of someone who had sent dozens of white-collar criminals to prison. Mr. President, we received an anonymous tip 8 months ago. Someone who had worked on Ocasio-Cortez's 2024 campaign said the internal financial records did not match what was being reported to the FEC. She pulled up a presentation on a screen that descended from the ceiling. Representative Ocasio-Cortez has raised approximately $17 million since 2020 through various organizations she controls. The Climate Justice Fund, the Green New Deal PAC, and the Progressive Future Foundation, all supposedly dedicated to fighting climate change and supporting progressive candidates. A chart appeared showing money flowing into these organizations from thousands of small donors. The average donation is $67 from teachers, nurses, service workers, and students, people who believe in her message and who trust her. Another chart appeared. Of that $17 million, we can only account for $4.2 million in legitimate expenses, such as actual organizing, campaign contributions, and advocacy work. The remaining $12.8 million was diverted. Trump looked up sharply. $12 million? She stole $12 million? Wray nodded affirmatively. Yes, sir. Let me show you the mechanism. He pulled out organizational charts showing a web of companies. She created a network of shell companies that exist only to receive money from her PACs. Sowery's Strategies, owned by her boyfriend Riley Roberts. Red Dawn Strategies, owned by her former chief of staff, Chakrabarti. Sunrise Solutions, Green Future Consulting, and Progressive Strategies Group, all owned by her friends, family members, or close associates. He pointed to the money flows. Her PACs pay these companies millions for vague services like climate consulting, digital organizing, and strategic communications. But there is no actual work product, no deliverables, and no evidence any services were rendered. The invoices are fake, and the companies are shells. Dr. Chen took over the explanation. And here is where it gets interesting. The money does not stay in these shell companies. Within days, sometimes hours of receiving payments, the money gets transferred to offshore accounts in the Bahamas, the Cayman Islands, and Singapore. She pulled up bank records. We traced 47 separate wire transfers, totaling $12.8 million. The pattern is identical every time. Ocasio-Cortez's PAC pays a shell company, The money sits briefly, and then it transfers offshore to accounts controlled by Ocasio-Cortez herself or her close associates. Trump leaned back in his chair. How did you prove the offshore accounts belong to her? We obtained the incorporation documents from the Bahamian bank. One of the accounts, Future Holdings LLC, was opened by Ocasio-Cortez in person in March 2023. We have her signature on the account opening forms, a copy of the passport she provided to the bank, and we even have security camera footage from the bank showing her opening the account. Dr. Chen pulled up a grainy security photo. It was unmistakably AOC, wearing sunglasses, sitting across from a bank officer. She flew to Nassau, opened the account, and started moving donor money into it. Over the past 3 years, approximately $4.7 million has flowed into that one account alone. Trump whistled low. So we have her dead to rights? Yes, sir. Ray confirmed. Wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and false statements to federal election officials. Each count carries significant prison time. She is looking at 20 to 25 years if convicted, and conviction is essentially certain as the evidence is overwhelming. Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy chief of staff, spoke up from his position by the fireplace. But we do not just want to prosecute her. We want her to confess, to publicly admit she defrauded her donors, and to resign in disgrace. Can we do that? Trump smiled. Oh, we can do that. We are going to bring her in here, show her everything we have, and give her a choice. Confess publicly and resign, or get arrested on the Capitol steps and spend the next 20 years in prison. What do you think she will choose? She will confess, Miller said confidently. She is young. She will want to save herself. Good, Trump said, looking at his watch. She is coming at 2 o'clock. Let us have everything ready. I want to see her face when she realizes we have her. They spent the next 2 hours organizing the evidence, creating a presentation that would systematically destroy every lie, every excuse, and every defense she might offer. Bank records, wire transfers, security footage, tax returns, emails where her accountant warned her she was breaking the law, text messages, coordinating transfers, everything was prepared. By 1:30 p.m., the Oval Office looked like a prosecutor's war room, with documents covering the desk, charts on easels, the forensic accountant's laptop connected to the screen, and Christopher Wray and 2 FBI agents standing ready. At 1:30 p.m. exactly, a black Suburban pulled up to the House side of the Capitol. 2 Secret Service agents got out, and one walked into the Cannon building, made his way to AOC's office, and informed her staff that the car was waiting. AOC emerged wearing a burgundy blazer over a white shirt, her signature hoop earrings, and bold red lipstick. She looked confident and camera-ready. She dressed for what she thought would be a confrontation she could win. She had no idea what was waiting for her. On the ride to the White House, she tweeted, "Headed to meet with Trump, ready to tell him that climate change is real, the Green New Deal is necessary, and working people deserve a champion. Wish me luck." The tweet received 60,000 likes in 10 minutes, and her followers flooded the comments with support. "Give him hell. Don't back down. We love you." She smiled at her phone, already planning the follow-up tweets about how Trump had yelled at her and she had stood strong. This was going to be great content. The Suburban pulled up to the West Wing entrance at 1:55 p.m. AOC got out, straightened her blazer, and took a deep breath, ready for battle. A Secret Service agent escorted her through the West Wing. Staffers stopped and stared as she passed. She thought they were staring because she was AOC, the famous progressive firebrand in Trump's White House. But actually, they were staring because they knew what was about to happen to her. Several had seen the evidence. They were watching a dead woman walking. Outside the Oval Office, Trump's secretary looked up from her computer. "The president will see you now, Congresswoman." The door opened, and AOC walked into the Oval Office and immediately knew something was wrong. Trump was behind his desk, but he wasn't alone. FBI Director Christopher Wray stood against the wall with his arms crossed. A woman in a business suit stood near the fireplace with a laptop and the resolute desk. usually neat and organized, was covered with documents. Trump stood as she entered. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, thanks for coming. He extended his hand, and she shook it, surprised by how normal it felt. Please sit. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Want anything? Water? Coffee? No? Thank you. Mr. President. She sat, hyper-aware of Christopher Wray watching her. Why was the FBI director here? Trump returned to his chair, leaned back, and steepled his fingers. I wanted to talk to you about your fundraising, the climate stuff, the Green New Deal PAC, the Climate Justice Fund. You have raised a lot of money. AOC kept her voice steady and professional. Yes, sir. Grassroots donations from people who believe in taking action on climate change. $17 million. That is impressive. Where did all that money go? And that was the moment she realized this wasn't about climate policy. This was about the money. And the FBI director was here because, oh God, they knew. Trump picked up a document from his desk. According to your FEC filings, you have paid about $12 million to various consulting companies. Let's talk about those companies. He read from the document. Salary Strategies. Paid $1 million over 3 years. That is your boyfriend's company, right? Riley Roberts? AOC's throat was dry. Riley provides legitimate consulting services for our organizations. What kind of consulting? He is a web designer. What does he know about climate policy or political organizing? He helps with digital strategy and communications. For $3.1 million? Trump looked skeptical. That is a lot of digital strategy. What exactly did he deliver for that money? Silence filled the room, because there was no good answer. Riley's company had produced almost nothing of value. Trump didn't wait. He pulled out more documents. Red Dawn Strategies, owned by Saikat Chakrabarti, your former chief of staff, paid $2.8 million. Sunrise Solutions, owned by your cousin, paid $1.9 million. Green Future Consulting, owned by a friend from college, paid $1.4 million. He looked up. Lots of money going to people you know personally. That is interesting. Director Wray, why don't you explain what the FBI found when they looked into these companies? Christopher Wray stepped forward. His voice was flat, professional, and damning. Congresswoman, we have been investigating your financial operations for 8 months. We have reviewed bank records, incorporation documents, invoices, and communications. Here is what we found. He pulled out organizational charts. These companies you have paid millions to are shell companies. They have no offices, no employees besides the person who owns them, and no other clients. They exist only to receive money from your organizations. He pointed to Salary Strategies. Your boyfriend's company has no physical location, no employees, and no other revenue streams. It is a bank account and a fake business name. That is it. Another chart. Red Dawn Strategies. Same thing. When we asked Mr. Chakrabarti to provide evidence of the services his company rendered for $2.8 million, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. AOC felt sick. These are legitimate businesses. No, they are not. Trump's voice cut through. They are fake companies you created to steal donor money. Let me make this very simple for you. He stood up and walked around the desk. You raise money from teachers and nurses. You tell them it is for fighting climate change. And then you pay millions to companies owned by your boyfriend, your friends, and your family companies that don't actually do anything. That is fraud, Congresswoman. That is theft. He pulled out invoices and spread them across the desk. Look at these. $847,000 for climate policy consulting. No detail, no breakdown, no description of deliverables, just a vague line item. Another invoice. $425,000 for digital organizing. By what? Digital organizing? Where is the work product? Show me the campaigns, the websites, the content that was created for $425,000, another $680,000 for strategic communications. Who communicated what to whom? Where are the strategy documents? Where are the communication plans? He looked at her. These aren't real invoices. These are fake billing documents created to justify moving money from your PACs to your friends, and we can prove it. Dr. Sarah Chen, the forensic accountant, stepped forward with her laptop. Let me show you where the money actually went. She pulled up her presentation on the screen, and a complex flowchart appeared, showing money moving from PACs to shell companies to offshore accounts. This is a wire transfer from the Climate Justice Fund to Souris Strategies on the 15th of June 2024, in the amount of $847,000. The invoice says this was for comprehensive climate policy consulting and strategic planning. She clicked. The money arrives in the Souris Strategies account at Citibank on June 15th. It sits there for exactly 48 hours. Then, on June 17th, the entire amount, all $847,000, is wire transferred to an account at First Caribbean International Bank in Nassau, Bahamas. Another click. The receiving account belongs to an LLC called Future Holdings. Future Holdings was incorporated in the Bahamas in March 2023, and it is controlled by. She looked directly at AOC. We have the incorporation documents. Your signature is on them. You are listed as the beneficial owner. AOC's voice came out as a whisper. I have never heard of Future Holdings. Dr. Chen pulled up documents. This is the account opening paperwork from First Caribbean. Your signature, a copy of your passport that you provided to the bank, and this. She pulled up a security camera photo, grainy but unmistakable. AOC sitting in a bank office, sunglasses on, signing documents. This is you opening that account in Nassau on March 14th, 2023. The bank's security footage confirms you flew to the Bahamas, opened an offshore account, and started moving donor money into it. Trump leaned forward. You personally opened an offshore account and laundered $847,000 into it. That is not a mistake. That is intentional fraud. Dr. Chen continued, relentless. And it is not just one transfer. We have identified 47 separate wire transfers over 3 years. Total amount, $12.8 million. The pattern is identical every time. She clicked through charts, showing transfer after transfer. Money goes from your PACs to shell companies, sits briefly, usually 24 to 72 hours, then transfers to offshore accounts in the Bahamas, Cayman Islands, or Singapore, to accounts controlled by you, by Saikat Chakrabarti, or by Riley Roberts. She pulled up a summary chart. Of the $17 million you raised, only $4.2 million went to legitimate expenses. The other $12.8 million was laundered through fake companies into offshore accounts. You stole almost 75% of the money donated to fight climate change. Trump walked to an easel covered with a cloth. He pulled the cloth off, revealing poster-sized photographs. Let's talk about what you did with the money. The first photo showed AOC at the Met Gala in a stunning custom dress. This is you at the Met Gala. September 2024. That dress, custom-made by Aurora James, cost $35,000, paid for by the Climate Justice Fund. Your accountant listed it as promotional expenses for public advocacy. He pointed to the dress. $35,000. That is more than half what a teacher makes in a year. And you bought it with money donated by teachers who thought they were saving the planet. Next photo. AOC, on a beach in designer sunglasses and expensive resort wear, Turks and Caicos, July 2025. The Ritz-Carlton, $3,500 per night. You stayed 7 nights. Total cost, $24,500, paid for by the Green New Deal PAC, listed as a strategy retreat for climate planning. Trump smiled coldly. You went with your boyfriend. No staff, no climate scientists, no strategists. Just you and Riley on a beach, drinking cocktails. Some strategy session. More photos appeared. AOC getting out of a Mercedes G-Wagon, shopping bags from Louis Vuitton, an apartment building in Miami. Mercedes G-Wagon, $142,000. Purchased through an LLC, funded by transfers from your PACs. Louis Vuitton purchases. We found receipts totaling $67,000 over 2 years. Handbags, luggage, clothing, all paid for with Climate Justice Fund credit cards. Condo in Miami Beach, $680,000, purchased in January 2025 through an LLC. We traced the money, and it came from the offshore accounts you had been filling with donor money. Trump walked back to his desk. Your congressional salary is $174,000 a year. You have no other disclosed income sources, so explain to me how you afforded a $680,000 condo, a $142,000 car, $67,000 in designer handbags, and luxury vacations. Where did that money come from? He already knew the answer. He just wanted to hear her try to explain it. AOC's voice was shaky. The condo is an investment. You cannot use donor money to buy personal property. Trump's voice rose. That is embezzlement? That is theft. Those people gave money to fight climate change, not to buy you a beach condo. He pulled out more financial records. Your publicly disclosed net worth when you took office in 2019 was less than $10,000. You had student loans. You were broke. Now, 7 years later, you own a $680,000 condo, a $142,000 car, designer clothes worth tens of thousands, and you have taken luxury vacations all over the world on a $174,000 salary. He leaned in. The math does not work unless you were stealing donor money, which you were. Trump handed her a document with an IRS seal at the top. And then there is this. Notice of tax deficiency from the IRS. They have been auditing you for 6 months. Do you know what they found? He didn't wait for an answer. You did not report any of the offshore income. The condo? Not on your tax returns. The car? Not disclosed. The $12.8 million you moved offshore? None of it reported as income. Dr. Chen pulled up tax returns. We compared your filed returns with your actual financial activity. You reported only your congressional salary, nothing else. But you received millions in unreported income from the offshore accounts. She showed the calculation. Total unreported income, $8.3 million. Tax owed at your bracket, approximately $2.9 million, plus penalties for fraud. Another $1.5 million, plus interest, $400,000. Total tax liability, $4.8 million. Trump picked up emails and started reading. This is from your accountant, April 2024. Alexandria, we need to discuss the Bahamas account. This income must be reported on your tax return. The IRS will eventually discover this, and the penalties will be severe. He looked up. Your response? Don't include it. I will handle it separately. But you never handled it. You just hid it and hoped you wouldn't get caught. Another email, June 2024. Your accountant again. Alexandria, I am formally advising you that failure to report this income is tax evasion. This is a federal crime. I cannot be party to this. What did you do? You fired him and hired someone who wouldn't ask questions. Trump tossed the emails onto the desk. That is not a mistake. That is not an oversight. That is intentional tax evasion. And that is a felony. Trump pulled out a different kind of document. A spreadsheet with hundreds of names. Let me read you some names. People who donated to your Climate Justice Fund. He read slowly, letting each name sink in. Emma Rodriguez, elementary school teacher in the Bronx, makes $52,000 a year. Donated $50 a month for 2 years. Total contribution, $1,200. She told our investigators it was money she could barely afford. But she believed in fighting climate change for her students' future. James Chen, emergency room nurse in Queens, works night shifts, donated $100 after every paycheck for 18 months. Total $2,400. He said he wanted to do something meaningful about global warming. Maria Santos, bartender in Brooklyn. Your old job. She donated her entire tax refund of $500. She said, "Seeing you in Congress made her believe regular people could make a difference." Trump looked up from the list. These people trusted you. They believed you were different. They thought their money was going to save the planet, to fight corporate greed, to build a better future. He picked up the photos of her at the Met Gala and in Turks and Caicos with her luxury car. Instead, their money bought you designer dresses and beach vacations and a condo in Miami. You stole from them, from people who have less than you, from people who believed in you. He stood up and walked around the desk. You know what you are? You are exactly what you claim to hate. You are a corrupt politician who got rich by lying to working people. You just did it with better branding. You slapped climate justice on it and thought that made it okay. He leaned against the desk, looking down at her. But theft is theft. Fraud is fraud. And you got caught. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat in the chair, her hands trembling. Everything Trump had said was true. Every document was real. The offshore accounts, the wire transfers, the luxury purchases, all of it. She had thought she was being careful, thought the shell companies and offshore accounts were untraceable, thought she would never get caught. She had been wrong. Trump walked back to his desk and sat down. His voice got quieter, more businesslike. Here is where we are. I have bank records proving you laundered $12.8 million through fake companies into offshore accounts. I have security footage of you opening those accounts. I have your tax returns showing you hid millions in income. And I have emails proving you knew you were breaking the law and did it anyway. He gestured to Ray. Director Ray has 2 FBI agents waiting outside this door. I can have them arrest you right now, right here in the Oval Office. We will perp walk you out through the West Wing with every camera in America watching. You will be arraigned tomorrow, held without bail because you have offshore accounts and are a flight risk, and trial in 6 months. And you will be convicted because the evidence is overwhelming. He paused. Federal sentencing guidelines for wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. At this scale, you are looking at 20 to 25 years in prison. You are 36 years old. You will be almost 60 when you get out. Your entire life gone. He opened a drawer, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and placed it on the desk between them. Or, option 2. You hold a press conference today. Right now. You read this statement. You confess everything. You admit you defrauded donors. You resign from Congress. And you agree to plead guilty to 1 count of wire fraud. We will drop the rest. You will get probation, no prison time, and you agree to pay back every dollar you stole, plus penalties, total repayment, $18 million. AOC stared at the statement. I don't have $18 million. You will sell the condo, sell the car, liquidate the offshore accounts, get a loan for the rest, work the rest of your life to pay it back if you have to. But you will pay back the people you stole from. He leaned forward. And one more thing. You sign an NDA. You do not write a book about this. You do not do interviews. You do not go on some redemption tour. You confess. You pay back the money. And you disappear from public life forever. Trump picked up a pen and held it out. Those are your options. Confess and rebuild your life, or fight and spend the next 25 years in prison. What is it going to be? Silence filled the room, long, terrible silence. Finally, AOC spoke. Her voice was small and broken. What do you want me to say? The truth. Tell me why you did it. More silence followed. Then, I wanted nice things. Her voice cracked. Everyone around me in Congress was rich. They had nice apartments, designer clothes. They traveled first class. I was still shopping at H&M and taking the subway. I felt like I had made it to the top, but I was still living like I was broke. So, you stole? I borrowed. I was going to pay it back. With what money? Trump's voice was hard. You were never going to pay it back. You were going to keep stealing until you got caught, which you did. Tears were running down AOC's face now. I made a mistake. You made 1,000 mistakes. Every wire transfer was a choice. Every fake invoice was a choice. Every time you bought designer clothes with donor money was a choice. You weren't confused. You weren't desperate. You were greedy. Trump stood up. And now you are caught. So decide. Confess and take your punishment. Or fight and go to prison for 2 decades. He pressed the button on his desk, and the door opened. The 2 FBI agents stepped inside, handcuffs visible on their belts. Last chance, Congresswoman. AOC looked at the agents, at the handcuffs, at the confession statement on the desk, and at her entire life about to end, one way or another. She reached for the pen. I will confess. Trump slid the statement toward her. Read it. Every word. Then, sign it. She read through tears. I, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, am resigning from Congress effective immediately. I have engaged in serious financial misconduct related to fundraising for climate causes. I misappropriated donor funds for personal use. I created fraudulent invoicing schemes through shell companies, and I moved money to offshore accounts to hide it from donors and from tax authorities. I made luxury purchases with money that was donated to fight climate change. I lied to my donors, to my constituents, and to federal election officials. I am deeply sorry for betraying the trust of people who believed in me. I will be pleading guilty to federal charges and will repay all funds with penalties. She signed it, then signed the NDA, then signed the plea agreement. Trump took the documents. Press conference in 30 minutes. You will read this statement at a podium in the press briefing room, word for word. No deviations. Then you leave Washington, and you never come back. He looked at Ray. Director, make sure she doesn't try to run. 30 minutes later, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stood at the podium in the White House press briefing room. The room was packed. Every reporter in Washington had dropped everything when they heard AOC was making an unexpected announcement at the White House. She looked different. The confidence was gone. The fire was gone. She looked small, defeated, and broken. Her hands shook as she held the statement, and her voice cracked as she read. I am resigning from Congress effective immediately. I have engaged in serious financial misconduct related to fundraising for climate causes. I misappropriated donor funds for personal use. I created fraudulent invoicing schemes through shell companies, and I moved money to offshore accounts to hide it from donors and from tax authorities. I made luxury purchases with money that was donated to fight climate change. Her voice broke. She paused, took a breath, and continued. I lied to my donors, to my constituents, and to federal election officials. I am deeply sorry for betraying the trust of people who believed in me. I will be pleading guilty to federal charges and will repay all funds with penalties. I have no excuse for my actions. I was wrong. I am sorry. She stepped away from the podium, and reporters erupted with questions, shouting over each other. How much money did you steal? Where did the money go? Did anyone else know? She did not answer. She just walked out of the briefing room, through the West Wing, and into a waiting car. Gone. 1 hour later, President Trump held his own press conference in the same room. Good afternoon. As you just heard, former Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez has resigned and confessed to defrauding her donors. The FBI has been investigating her for 8 months, and the evidence of fraud was overwhelming. She made the right choice to confess and resign. A reporter shouted, "Will she go to prison? She is pleading guilty to 1 count of wire fraud. She will get probation, but she has to pay back every dollar she stole, about $18 million total with penalties, and she is barred from ever holding federal office again." Why no prison time? Trump shrugged. She cooperated fully, confessed, resigned, and agreed to pay it all back. The Justice Department felt that was appropriate. I deferred to their judgment. Another reporter asked, "What message does this send?" Trump leaned forward. The message is simple. You can call yourself a democratic socialist. You can claim you are fighting for working people. But if you steal from those same working people, you will get caught, and you will pay the price. There is no free pass just because you have the right politics or the right message. Fraud is fraud. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Progressive activists on Twitter went through the 5 stages of grief in real time. Denial. This is a setup. Trump fabricated evidence. Anger. This is a political prosecution. Bargaining. Maybe she made a mistake, but her heart was in the right place. Depression. I can't believe she did this. Acceptance. She betrayed us. The squad released a statement that was notable for what it didn't say. We are shocked and saddened by today's events. If the allegations are true, they represent a serious betrayal of progressive values. We will have no further comment. Translation. She is on her own. Democratic Party leadership was even harsher. Nancy Pelosi stated, "Corruption is corruption, regardless of party. If the evidence supports the charges, justice must be served." Chuck Schumer added, "What she allegedly did is unconscionable. The people who donated to her deserved better." The donors themselves were devastated. Emma Rodriguez, the teacher from the Bronx, was interviewed by CNN. "I gave $50 a month for 2 years. That was money I could barely afford. I skipped dinners out. I didn't buy new clothes because I believed we were fighting climate change, and she used it to buy a beach condo. I feel so stupid, so betrayed." Within 48 hours, New York's governor announced a special election for AOC's seat. Her congressional office was cleaned out, and her social media accounts went dark, and she had disappeared. 6 months later, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stood in federal court and pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud. The judge sentenced her to 5 years of probation, 2,000 hours of community service, and ordered her to pay $18.2 million in restitution. She sold the Miami condo, sold the car, and liquidated what was left in the offshore accounts. But it wasn't enough. She had spent too much. She took out loans for the rest, loans she would be paying off for decades. She obtained a job at a small nonprofit in upstate New York. Low profile, quiet work. She kept her head down, never gave interviews, and never spoke publicly about what happened. Her Twitter account, which once had 8.4 million followers, posted one final message. "I am deeply sorry for my actions. I betrayed people who trusted me. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. I have nothing else to say." Then, silence. The political world moved on quickly. There was always another scandal, another story, another crisis. Within a year, AOC was mostly forgotten. A cautionary tale, a punchline. The progressive, who turned out to be just another corrupt politician. 2 years later, a political science professor at Columbia published a book about her rise and fall. The final chapter was titled, "The Fraud Behind the Brand." The conclusion read, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez understood something fundamental about modern politics. Authenticity sells. People don't just want policies. They want to believe in the person selling the policies. They want someone who seems real, genuine, and relatable. AOC mastered that performance. The bartender who became a congresswoman, the democratic socialist who wore affordable clothes and took the subway, the fighter for working people who wasn't corrupted by wealth or power. But it was a performance. Behind the authentic brand was someone who wanted exactly what she claimed to oppose: wealth, luxury, and comfort. Someone who was willing to steal from the very people she claimed to represent in order to live the lifestyle she envied in others. The tragedy isn't that she was greedy. Lots of politicians are greedy. The tragedy is that she convinced millions of people, good people, struggling people, that she was different, that she was on their side, that their small donations would change the world. And when they discovered she had been lying to them, stealing from them, betraying them the entire time, it didn't just destroy her career, it destroyed their faith in the possibility of honest politics. That is the real damage she did, not the $12.8 million she stole, but the hope she killed when people realized that even the politicians who claim to be different are just better at hiding it. The lesson was simple, brutal, and complete. You can have the right message, the right brand, and the right politics. You can inspire millions, build a movement, and become a cultural icon. But if you steal from the people who believe in you, eventually you will get caught. And when you do, the fall is absolute. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez learned that in the Oval Office, looking at FBI bank records that proved she was everything she had claimed to fight against. And by the time she learned it, it was far too late.